So we are a couple of 100 yards away from the National Theatre.
Yes, we are.
In Waterloo, and we've come to your lovely flat.
Thank you.
Well, it's not yours though, isn't it? It's
Well, it is mine. It is mine for as long as I pay rent. It is mine.
Which, as a director / actor / writer, isn't always the easiest.
No, exactly.
No.
It's probably I've got a few months left. Let's put it that way.
That's good.
Hopefully.
Good. So I'm here. We haven't discussed anything before. It's just here for a free-form chat.
I'm terrified.
About probably your favourite subject.
Shakespeare.
So I'm here with Joe O'Malley.
Hi.
Joe, how do you want to be
You know what? Professionally Joseph, but we don't have to keep things professional here. For once, I'll let it slide just for today.
Oh, we can call you Joseph O'Malley.
Mr. O'Malley as well is fine.
That's cool. Yeah. Mr. O'Malley. And we went to drama school together.
We did.
And we had a bit of a hiatus where I only saw you once in 10 years.
At Waterloo Station, so in this vicinity.
And you had no money. And I lent you some money to get on the tube. Did I buy you a ticket? I can't.
I don't know. I don't remember that. Trust you to remember that forever in your debt. That's why I don't even get paid by the Barn Theatre. I'm just working off the debt that's accrued.
Modern slavery.
Yeah.
I've heard the adverts.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot going on around at the moment. Anyway, we'll move on from modern slavery. well, it's kind of topical because I spoke to a young person over the last couple of days who goes to school in Cirencester, and they said that they thought that they were forced to learn Shakespeare.
Right. Okay.
It's not quite modern slavery.
It's not quite there, but I can imagine if you're 13, 14 years old, it could feel like that.
And I'm intrigued because as artistic director of the Barn Theatre, I've just picked a Shakespeare play to be put on. Did I make a huge mistake?
Yes. No, of course not at all. I think it's, I mean, when you're younger, it can sort of feel like your mind's, let's face it, your mind's not on the sort of, let me start again. When you're young, when you're that sort of young, your mind's you're not in the zone of these sort of creative worlds. You're basically thinking about girls, if you're old enough, or boys, or, what you're going to do when you finish school, or whose house you're going to go out and play with. Yes, I can imagine, Shakespeare's not quite high on the list. But for me, it's sort of once you mature out of that stage, sort of 16, 17, 18, for me, that was when, personally, Shakespeare really became sort of quite amazing. I'd say, just to bring it straight on to me, if I may.
I was expecting that.
Yeah, thank you. Me. My first real sort of dalliance with Shakespeare, where I really started to enjoy it, was actually, I think it was probably like GCSE English, and we were doing Henry IV Part 1, so similar sort of, in that vein of history plays. And I was thinking about this earlier when I knew you were coming over to invade my lovely flat, and I thought we were given the book, and each lesson we had to read a scene at home and then come in and we'd do the scene or two scenes if they were quite short. We'd study them and do all the usual English stuff. And that's the first time ever I remember, probably in my entire school life, actually doing more than was asked by the teacher rather than much less. And actually I was thinking about this morning, and it feels probably how it felt to me then is how when you watch like a Netflix sort of show, it feels now like... I read to the end of that chapter and I was like, I've got to read another one. At the end of the scene, I was like, I need to read another scene. And there are a lot of sort of parallels with the Netflix, especially with a show like Henry IV or a lot of those history plays. There's a big cast of characters, a huge amount of double crossing. You never know sort of what's going to happen next, or basically who's going to die next as well. And I think that then coupled with lots of sort of bawdiness in, say, Henry IV, for example, with pub scenes and rude language and sort of, I as a teenager, I absolutely loved that.
And that's really interesting because it's sort of for me. It was exactly the same. Henry V starts off. It was it's first of all, Henry V was the play that I studied at GCSE. Was it A level? Was it A level? And basically the reason that I programmed it is because it was the only one I bloody knew. And I'm coming into this admitting, putting my hands up that I am not a Shakespeare expert. And a little bit of me, just being honest, felt slightly like, oh, if I program Shakespeare, people will think I'm really like classic and, sophisticated and the programming. I get so many compliments about the programming. I'm going to just say, down the lens of the camera, if it's over there, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I'm making it up as I go along.
True. That is not true. It's very good.
But the reality is, I bloody loved that play.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it even more now.
Yeah.
I think I had a brilliant teacher as well, Mrs. Smith, who I've referenced already today a few times. She brought it to life, and I think I was lucky that our source reference material, we would watch Kenneth Branagh do a scene and then we'd read it. And so I wasn't reading it first of all and going, what the fuck does this mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was watching it and going, okay, I get it. It's a coming of age play. We've got naughty Hal turns into pragmatic Henry, and then he has some of the most exciting, brilliant speeches of any Shakespeare play ever.
Yeah.
In one, and again, it's like then it just randomly turns into almost like a rom-com at the end, which is balmy but brilliant as well. It does have everything, but I totally understand. I tried to read some Shakespeare's from my time since then, 14, 15, 16 years old, to now 30-year-old running a theatre in the middle of the Cotswolds, with sort of the glaring eye of the Royal Shakespeare Company just an hour north of us. I'm thinking, I must up my Shakespeare repertoire.
Yeah.
I can't read it,
but
I can't think of anything better than watching it.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be so exciting. I'm also just to bring this back to me. I'm very very aware we've been talking about you for a while.
That's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. I am. I forgot what I was going to say now. This happens
I'm the
age.
king. I am.
I'm in charge. No, I'm not. I'm basically. I was about to say not a fan of Shakespeare. That's not true. I am a fan of Shakespeare, but having worked in all sorts of genres of theatre, both acting and directing, it is actually it's a style of theatre and a playwright that I've actually had really remarkably little interaction with.
We did the Shakespeare project at drama school.
Well, exactly. I mean, back in drama school and stuff like that. But so I also, to be honest, speak from a perspective of someone that loves to go and see it. But again, I'm not completely. It's probably something that, especially in terms of directing, I would feel slightly apprehensive about.
I think I even offered you to pitch for Henry V.
And I said no.
Because, you did. You did. But does it scare you? Does it scare you?
I think it does, yeah, absolutely. And it's not, and the stupid thing about it is it's not the idea of the stories that scare me. It's the inherent sort of thing within me that says, I'll get Shakespeare wrong, and everyone will know that I got Shakespeare wrong. It's a really interesting one. It's not. I don't feel like that. Oh, that's my phone going off. I'll just turn that off. Right. I don't feel like that with any other genre or style of theatre or playwright at all. I'd be happy taking on a musical. I'd be happy taking on. Yeah, basically
anything apart from
thriller,
Shakespeare.
Yeah, basically,
what about Greek classics? Or
you know what? I'd give it a go. I've actually done a bit more Greek theatre, so we did a lot in drama school. But since then, I've done the odd thing. I did the Trojan Women a few years ago. Played a badass Menelaus. Actually, you should look that up. It was really good. But no,
it's unlikely.
Fair enough. Very busy man. But no. So my original point I was probably trying to make is, I've had very little to do with it, and I love watching it, but I'm scared of it. very much.
So this brings up an interesting point.
Yeah.
So does that, as well as talking about whether it should be in our education system, which I think we'll come back to because it's an interesting point, as an actor or a director, isn't it a little bit, it's our greatest ever playwright coming from Britain. And people are incredibly, does it come with a weight of pressure on your shoulders to get it right?
I would say, coming at it from a point of a director, it undoubtedly, yes, for me, that's how I feel. And it's really interesting looking at that. I think sometimes even the audience can feel pressure when they go into the auditorium. They feel the pressure to understand it or know it. The director feels the pressure to get it right. The actors feel just as much pressure to not, muck up their characters. And I think sometimes the whole world... And their lines, exactly. Well, other show, I used to be the king of forgetting my lines and just making stuff up. But you try... Yeah, thank you. You try doing it in iambic pentameter, making up a new line. I mean, if you can do it, brilliant. Yeah. Good luck to you. But, really, it can often feel to everyone involved in these productions like there's sort of quite a lot of pressure and I suppose looking at it, that's why I like to work in comedy, especially, and stuff like that. And it's probably just a confidence thing, but to me, I feel like there's no expectations or in sort of comedy, you either make people laugh or you don't, and you do that by any fair means or foul.
But many of Shakespeare's works
they
are
really
full on comedies, or even in the tragedies, there's elements of comedy.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is, I think these are all things that audiences can feel a bit intimidated by it. People involved in the show, creatives, artists, can feel a bit intimidated by it. But if it's done right, it feels fully inclusive. When it's done right, and it's not always done right, but when it is done right, the audience feel fully part of it. They feel involved. Even if they're not, they don't know the play very well, they're fully involved with the story, with the lines. Actors can just really get it so amazingly right on the night. Or sometimes you can go if it's not. Things aren't quite clicking and you're literally listening to people shout old language in sort of shouty voices and occasionally have a sword fight and you're all a bit like, so you really have to, you really have to connect with people, I think, with these stories. And it's easy to do because every single Shakespeare story pretty much is, they're the origins of so much theatre that we have, so we can... Almost every sort of Shakespeare's major plays, you can see how we've taken elements of those stories, and they're sort of cornerstones of sort of modern culture now. And I think when it's done right, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, I think we should take the pressure off because modern plays done right are brilliant. Modern plays done badly are not brilliant.
Absolutely.
So we there is this sort of panic mode when it comes to Shakespeare, and I do feel as society, but as a theatre industry, as audience members, that we should almost take the pressure off because it's probably the most done work if we think the last couple of 100 years.
Absolutely.
It should be the other way around if you think about it, because
it should be a complete playground really for people to use the text as
and reinvent
a basis, reinvent it. But as we know, that doesn't really happen as events at the Globe and things like that in the last few years have sort of shown that sometimes you're always fighting that fight with Shakespeare between creation and modernity and tradition and what is thought of sort of as is how you do it really.
So you believe that Shakespeare is for everyone?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Did you see Good Morning Britain the other day? Did you see the?
Thankfully, no.
But have you seen what happened?
No, what happened?
So on Good Morning Britain there was a debate. Was it Adrian Childs? I can't remember who it was on there. He was debating for Shakespeare, and there was this lady who was debating against Shakespeare. I think her words were that I got a double English literature degree despite of Shakespeare. It turned me off the language. I didn't understand it, and I get some of her points. She said that she was dyslexic and she found it very difficult to read, and people find it boring and it's not relevant. And then Adrian, I think it's whoever the gentleman was saying he was, but all the themes and ideas and everything are still relevant today. And she said,
absolutely.
or a couple of twins sort of not recognizing each other, blah, 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 blah. Is that really that relevant? I think he was referring to some of the histories and some of the other plays, because not every Shakespeare play is good. Yeah. I'm going to put it out there. I'd say half of them are good.
Yeah. Well, that's of course it's all a matter of opinion, but that's another
I think
thing
I'm probably
that you're
right.
quite probably you always are. That's another thing that is sometimes you feel like you're not quite allowed to admit that not all the plays are as good as the others, like. And also, we're going back to this snobbishness and things like that can hang around Shakespeare, in that, like I will put my, hand on my heart and say that Midsummer Night's Dream is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant play. And Romeo and Juliet is absolutely brilliant. But almost, if you sort of say that...
Which one do you hate?
Which one do I hate?
The Tempest.
No, well, you know what? I never liked The Tempest, and then I saw a production for primary school age people, about an hour and 20 minutes long, by the Young Shakespeare Company, which they didn't alter any of the text at all. Obviously, it was abridged, but nothing was sort of like other Shakespeare for younger people companies sometimes do, which is actually change the text to make it easier. They didn't do any of that. And it was the best version of that play, and one of the best Shakespeare performances I've seen in a long, long time. And it completely spoke to me for the first time. And I actually, you could felt, all the feels for Prospero and all of this, and it's just absolutely fantastic. So if any of the plays are done well, it works. You know what? Sometimes I'll be the first one to admit that sometimes, some history plays can be quite hard to access as well. Sometimes if you've lost attention for a second, or you're thinking about what ice cream you're going to have in the interval, and suddenly the Duke of Northumberland, the Earl of Gloucester, and the Prince of whatever come on, and they've only got 3 lines each, but you've lost track of who's who, and then they all walk off again, and you're like, right, something's happened there, but I no idea. It
was probably vital to the plot.
It was vital to the plot, but I was tying my shoe, and and that can be sometimes that can be quite difficult. What's my least favourite Shakespeare?
I'd love it if it was something like Macbeth.
Well, you know what? I don't like long plays. Never have. I don't have the attention span.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm not going to lie to you.
I'll be honest. Like Hamlet can get in the sea, or like King Lear. Oh, it's just they're great, but for me they're too long. I hadn't seen Romeo and Juliet in years and years and years and years, and then I saw a production. And it was a bit of a revelation to me. I really thought I would be bored, and what
was it? 47 minutes from top to bottom.
Yeah, for preschool age children, and I thought
there's
it was
a theme
brilliant.
here.
Yeah. No, you know what? There's a reason why some plays are performed all the time, constantly, everywhere, and it's because the themes are universal as well. But the language is just stunning,
and we can all relate to love and loss.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. But what's fun about Midsummer Night's Dream is no one can really relate to fairies running around.
Well, we can. We can.
So,
the one that I've been talking about the most during this exploration, that's what I'm calling it. It's an exploration of Shakespeare.
Very snazzy.
Is a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. I couldn't tell you who directed it. It was at the RSC when I was about 12, 13 years old. And I walked in expecting to have people in frilly coats sort of speaking in loud, posh accents at me. And it was an incredibly diverse cast. They had music in it, they had movement, they had puppetry, they had amazing tech. The fairy world was on a garbage site.
Yeah.
And there was like trolleys and, scaffolding and everything. And I was like, what is this? This is everything I thought Shakespeare was. It's not that. It's not that. It was so... It was like if you were watching Stranger Things. It was like, you're going to the... What's it called? The other world.
The Upside Down.
Upside Down.
Yeah.
And that's what it was like, going into the fairy land. And then the guy... this shows how much I know about Shakespeare. What's the name of the fairy man?
Yes.
No.
Oberon.
Oberon.
I was going to say Agamemnon, but that's
a Greek thing,
that's
which you know
thing.
lots about.
I know lots.
So
about.
Oberon, we'll cut to the part where I said, Oberon. The Oberon had the most beautiful tenor R&B voice ever, and I was like, cool. I came from a music background, really. I sang a lot when I was young.
Yeah.
And for me, that was my way in. And I went, Shakespeare is for me.
Yeah.
And I was with all my fellow classmates, and we went to a theatrical school at all. And we all came out of that going, not just I love Shakespeare, but I love theatre. It was the best theatrical experience that I'd had to date. That date. Still, I'm remembering it now. It still has an impact on me. And I think very soon after that, I went, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. So even though I'm not a Shakespeare expert by a long shot, as you can tell, it just was the access point for me, which is so important. And that's what I want for everyone else. And, yes, I read Henry V when I was in school, and, I jest about it being the only play that I know. But in reality, I picked this piece because I felt it was the most relevant for now.
Yeah.
I felt like, it's a piece that is so jingoistic, it's so pride of Britain. Yeah. And at the time where the nation is totally divided, I couldn't think of anything but stir up a little controversy in little old Cirencester and talk about who the leaders of today are.
Yeah.
Because who is Henry? Who is like the pinnacle of leadership? Pragmatic, brilliant decision maker. Henry, he'll get someone killed, or he'll marry the Queen or the Prince, Catherine.
Nigel Farage.
He makes the right decisions for the country.
Yeah.
We don't have that person right now.
No, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
So who? So again, that's why it's amazing how Shakespeare does it without even thinking about it. It reinvents itself. If you just keep an eye on what's happening in the world and then say, pick the right play, Shakespeare just automatically, and they think Hal, who's directing the piece, he's a brilliant director.
That's good that he's called Hal as well.
Yeah, I know, that's cool. It works,
is that
doesn't
why he wants to do the show?
That's why he got the job.
Yeah,
basically.
no, fair enough.
But basically, it was there. It's there on a plate because these plays just happen to ring true if you just reflect what's happening in the world, they just work.
Yeah,
and that doesn't happen with. So I'm not going to name any playwrighs, that'll be harsh. But, their work...
Alan Ayckbourn.
We might do.
He's a good example of someone that, why don't we treat Shakespeare like Alan Ayckbourn and just admit that some plays are rubbish that he's written? Do you know what I mean? Everyone's happy to say Alan Ayckbourn. Yeah, he's written more plays than anyone else, but so many of them are rubbish, like utter rubbish.
Yeah, and he's a cunt.
No.
Luckily, we're not going out live. No, I'll scrap that.
but you're not really so much allowed to say that about Shakespeare. You have to be all hipster about Shakespeare now. You have to pick you like Midsummer Night's Dream.
It's genuinely genius.
Oh my god, no, the one I like, if you really like Shakespeare, you like A Winter's Tale.
King Leontes. That was actually the first Shakespeare I did. I remember my opening.
That's an example. Statues don't come to life ever. That happens at the end of Winter's Tale, doesn't it? Doesn't make sense. Don't understand that bit.
No.
Some bits I'm still, while you were saying all of that, I've just been racking my brain to think of what Shakespeare I think is really rubbish. I still can't think.
No, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I think it is actually. Like, I think
I don't like Comedy of Errors. Really, that's one that
that's quite rubbish.
I did that at drama school, and I hated it. I don't really like funny Shakespeares, to be honest. I like funny moments in Shakespeare, but when I want the thought that I have in my head. Again, I do love Midsummer Night's Dream, so I'm going to discount A Midsummer Night's Dream and say that I don't like the funny Shakespeares.
The funny, yeah, okay, fair enough. Much Ado About Nothing can be quite good, actually. I've seen a great version of Much Ado About Nothing, and I've seen... What else have I seen that's quite funny? Yeah, I mean, what's amazing is that they were written so long ago, and we can even talk about them like, this one's pretty good, this one's, without them being like basically museum pieces that have to be treated as such.
It's like if we were talking about what the latest show is on Netflix. That was alright. Yeah. No, it's not as good as The OC though. The OC is amazing. Is The OC on Netflix? Because I'd quite like to revisit that. Did you ever watch it?
It's right next to Dawson's Creek.
Was Dawson's Creek? Dawson's Creek was actually based on Hamlet.
That's not true, is it?
But I could say that. People would believe me. Fake news.
Fake news. But there's certainly Game of Thrones-esque sort of things running through all the history plays, of course.
For sure. And obviously amazing modern works. What time do you have to go?
Sort of like like quarter of an hour.
Quarter of an hour. That's cool. Okay, so let's bring it back to some sort of
me. Oh no, sorry.
Some talking points.
Yeah.
Do you think it should be compulsory to teach Shakespeare in schools?
Do I think it should be compulsory to teach Shakespeare in schools? Well, I think as our greatest ever playwright, I think why not? I mean, it's if you're gonna.
I'm not convinced by your answer.
No, well, you know what?
What are the pros of it?
Well, I would say, as part of a rounded sort of literary education of looking at sort of Dickens and Shakespeare and Marlowe and stuff like that, then absolutely, I think it should be included. If the kids are studying English, literally English literature, then or whatever, Shakespeare just has to be there. Absolutely. Okay, I'm revising my answer. Yes, definitely they should. But we should also be aware as theatre makers that it's sort of an often said thing, especially amongst sort of producing houses, theatres, that panto is the very first piece of theatre that most sort of children are exposed to. So, if you do a good one, like they'll keep coming back for life. Or if it can often be what do you call it, like a sort of entry-level drug to the world of theatre. They see panto, they go wow, and then 5 years down the line they're seeing a serious play or whatever, and they have a lifelong love of theatre. I think there's also a responsibility that sort of after panto comes Shakespeare, in that's.
There should be 2-for-1 offers with most theatres. If you buy the panto, you get the Shakespeare free.
You get the Shakespeare for free. But no, you really, that's the next thing. If the kids have no interest in theatre at all, that is most likely in school the next thing that they will be exposed to, drama-wise. And so it's it is important to get it right, sort of teaching-wise, but it's important for, I think, these theatre companies that put on work for kids, like Young Shakespeare Company, like a lot of others, like the National Theatre do it and stuff like that. If you get that right, the kids love panto because they get to shout out and whatever. But then if they go and see a Shakespeare play, classic piece of text that they also love, you've won. Then they're gonna be theatre fans their whole life. So I think it should be taught in schools, but it's got to be taught well.
And again, just moving on because I know we're coming to the conclusion. As a theatre, do you think any producing house or theatres that get Arts Council funding, do you think they have a duty to bring that to their audiences?
I would say, I'm probably no. I don't think. Let me start again. That's an interesting question. I would say certain theatres have an absolute duty to bring it to their audiences. Things like Shakespeare to their audience. Places like the National Theatre, stuff like that. They have an actual sort of mission statement that they need to do that. I don't think it's, theatres have to. I don't think it's an absolute thing that theatres have to put on and programme Shakespeare every year. But if you're a top of the range theatre and you want to be doing top work, you can't go far wrong than programming the greatest ever playwright who's ever lived,
and
along with Alan Ayckbourn, of course.
Oh, Alan, bless you. Yeah. So I'm coming back to the people who actually walk through the doors.
Yeah.
I think I can be perfectly honest and say that we're slightly low on the ticket sales, to be honest, at the moment. I think that this is not sold. That partly might be our marketing efforts, but
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm going to get there. That's why we're here chatting about things that we'll get there as a theatre. So how do you think we should be engaging with our audience, our young people, people who maybe are the Netflix generation, YouTubers, social media? How is Shakespeare relevant to them?
Well, exactly. I think, if you want to connect with, young people today to bring them into the theatre, I think I know that for a fact that you're doing a sort of modern adaptation of the original story. That's going to go some way, absolutely, to the kids coming in and comprehending it. I just think it's about getting that balance right of making a real, honouring this amazing text and the piece itself, but also making it exciting, making it accessible, which is, easy-ish to do, like making it visually and sort of spectacular, and I just think the hard, I think once those kids are through the door, they're going to absolutely love it. The hardest thing is getting them through the door.
And how do we do that?
That's a good question.
Cast Aaron Sidwell.
Yeah, well, exactly. But no, you can cast people that are recognisable. But you need to market it as such. You need to market it in the way that you want the end product of the show to be. So it's exciting, it's explosive, it's, full of action and adventure and romance and stuff like that, as opposed to this is a Shakespeare,
heavy, dense,
there's going to be lots of speeches and it's going to do you good to see it, because
it shouldn't feel like taking your multivitamins in the morning.
No, not at all.
It should be a shot of Jaeger in the evening.
Yeah, don't drink, kids. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you, Joseph O Malley.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed myself. Now get out of my house.
How long do you think that took? Don't look.
I reckon 33 minutes and 54 seconds.
Correct.
Oh, no way.
It's amazing how you worked that out. Oh, shit, I forgot to press record.
Oh, no,
lying. Lying. Cool.
Cheers.